This is a short tutorial on how to set up a keypad application on your computer. As you can see on this iPhone, I have 4 keypad apps, and I'm going to use KeyPad for Google SketchUp in this demo, but all keypad apps are set up in a similar way, so it will be useful for any of the apps. Let me try to start by running the KeyPad for Google SketchUp. So once you download the application from the iTunes App Store, you would run the application and you would be confronted with this startup screen. The first thing you would want to do is tap on documentation and wait a moment as the documentation is generated in real time, so that the application has a smaller memory footprint. So you will get a listing like this. The beginning part are some general notes, and then there's a section describing general things about keypad controls. So all this will be in all keypad apps, it would be the same thing. And then there's an important section here in the settings reminding you to make sure to go into settings and switch the application to Mac or Windows mode as needed. And then the last part is a lengthy index of all the controls in the keypad app, and for each keypad app this section would be different. And you see it shows the icons on the left, then functions, and then you have the keyboard shortcut that it generates and a short explanation of each function. So this would be a similar layout for any keypad app. Typically you don't want to go through this list at the beginning. I would say just read the beginning part here, sections 1, 2, and then you can jump into the app as I will show you. And then as you explore the app more, you can come back to this index and look up something that you couldn't figure out by just trying it out. So that would be the documentation. And part of the documentation, it tells you to go to the website of the application, dopplerthepalm.com/keypad, and download a server application on your computer that talks to this keypad application. Now before I do that, let me also show you the settings for the app. So you would go to the standard settings application on your iPhone or iPod Touch, and then on the bottom you scroll down to the keypad app you want, in this case KP Sketch, and you see you have control over the sound, you have control over orientation. By default the orientation will be dynamic, meaning that the application icons will actually reorient themselves if you rotate the device. This is somewhat inconvenient, especially when you're doing video recording or if you have your iPhone or iPod Touch set in a fixed position. So I actually like to lock it in one orientation. And most importantly, you make sure that you've selected Mac or Windows depending on where the server will be running. So following the directions in the documentation, I would now go to the website of the app. So here's Safari. I would go to the dopplerthepalm.com website and go to the download section, and depending whether I have Mac or Windows, I would go to the corresponding section, in this case Mac, and you see there's a KeyPad Server application here in the center that I can download, and on the bottom there's rows of plugin files which are relevant only for certain keypad apps. For example, KeyPad for Google SketchUp or for Photoshop do need additional plugins that you need to separately download in addition to the server application. So let me first show you the server application that all keypad apps will require, and then I'll come back to the plugins as the need arises. So I would just click here, and here we go. We got the disk image downloaded. On the Windows system it's similar. You get a zip file that you can unzip, and inside the disk image there's the main KeyPad Server application, which you can put anywhere you want on your computer. There's a readme file with instruction telling you what I just said, tells you to put it in the applications folder preferably, and run the KeyPad server and click on the question mark. So let me drag this application KeyPad server onto the applications folder, and that's it. We're basically done for installation. I can eject this image, and let me go to the applications folder where I installed it, go to KeyPad server and run it. This is running on Snow Leopard, so the first time you run something you download from the internet, it asks you for permission. So let's open it, and here hidden behind this window is the KeyPad server application. Now if you have a firewall running, then you would see an additional dialog open up at this stage, asking you permission to allow KeyPad server to talk over your local area network, and you should answer that affirmatively, otherwise the communication with the iPhone, iPod Touch would be blocked. So in this case we didn't see that dialog because I've run KeyPad server on this computer before, so the firewall has already been taught not to bother me about running KeyPad server. So the question mark button here gives you additional help on what to do next, and there's some instructions on how to configure the network, but I'm going to show you all this in a video, so I don't need to read this. So the server application is running, and I can leave it running in the background. Here in the dock I can go in and I can say keep it in the dock, which I've already done previously. So this means that it will always be easily accessible. If you use keypad apps a lot, then you probably want also to check off open at login, which means next time you log in, the KeyPad server application will start by default and run in the background. So at this point you can also go and hide the KeyPad server app and just let it run in the background and don't bother you. But let me bring the window back in front, because we're going to talk about what is displayed in this list, since this is a first time setup. Okay, so we do have the server running. Now ideally I would now go and install some plugin files as well if the need is there, but since I want to do first a general setup introduction, let me delay that step and close Safari, and let's just set up the first time communication between the iPhone, iPod Touch and the KeyPad server application. So you would pick one of the KeyPad apps. Maybe I try the Photoshop one now. They all work the same way as far as the initial setup goes. And you see, as soon as you launch it, now that KeyPad server is running on the computer, you will see the name of the computer listed here. And this is done via Bonjour, which is an Apple technology. So it's installed on every Macintosh, and you don't need to do anything special to get this functionality. However, on some networks, especially if you are using it over Wi-Fi at work, Bonjour may be a protocol that is blocked. So then in that case, the server advertises itself via Bonjour, but you won't actually see the computer name listed here. So there's several ways around that. One is to look back at the configuration of your network and allow Bonjour to communicate, which is generally a useful thing to have. Or you could say, okay, I'm going to use manual mode instead and actually type in the host and port number, which here you see in the KeyPad server window, and I can bypass the firewall, hopefully by doing a direct connection. So if, however, you were happy to just go along with Bonjour, and I'll say a few words about the Windows setup in a moment with regards to this. So if you want to go with Bonjour, you just tap on the computer mem, that's all it takes, and you have connection established. Now, in this case, since I've run KeyPad server before, there was no other interruption. I was immediately logged in into the KeyPad server. So just to demonstrate what happens the first time you set things up, I'm going to quit this KeyPad app, and notice that the KeyPad Server application said back ready for connection. But I'm going to click forget memorized devices because this iPhone has already been paired with KeyPad Server. That's how it knew about it. So I'm going to say forget memorized devices. So now the history is cleared from the KeyPad Server's preferences file. And I'm going to try to connect again, let's say this time with KeyPad for SketchUp. And now again, Bonjour will be advertised. Now when I tap on Garavan, you see I get a dialog telling me, do you want to allow this pairing, once, deny it, or always allow? If you click always allow, then this device will send a unique identifier to KeyPad Server, which will be memorized by KeyPad Server so that in the future this will not be displayed. So that's basically the sort of default way to connect to KeyPad Server. Occasionally you may want to clear the memorized device list if you give away your iPhone or iPod Touch to somebody. Now, despite the fact that communication is immediately established, in the background, just so that you know, all communication between the server and the iPhone or iPod Touch is in addition tagged with a password which is dynamically generated at every session. So there's an additional layer of security which is transparent to the user, but just in case you're interested, there is this thing happening behind the wall. So at this point I could just start using the app. However, I want to show you what other possibilities there are in terms of first-time setup. On a Windows machine, Bonjour is not available by default, but you can download it as the help file in the KeyPad Server application tells you from Apple for free, and you could install it. Then you have a similar situation as in the description I just went through. You could, however, decide you don't want to install Bonjour on Windows, or maybe you do install Bonjour, but just like on a Mac, you do run into an obstacle where Bonjour is blocked by your local area network. And in that case, then you fall back on the manual option. And let me demonstrate that next. So let's run KeyPad for Google SketchUp. And instead of going with Bonjour now, I'm going to just use manual mode. So I'll read off the host. And now I've set up this camera so that it's actually required me to type sideways on this stupid keyboard, and this is surprisingly difficult. Okay, here we go. That's the host number I'm reading off the KeyPad Server window, and then the port number 587, and the port number changes sometimes. So here we go, and we're connected. So that's it. That's the manual mode. It's a bit more lengthy of a process to connect, but sometimes you have to live with that if your firewall blocks it or you don't want to use Bonjour. So that's a basic setup. Now, occasionally you may run into some network problems. Make sure that KeyPad Server says ready for connection before you initiate the connection. Sometimes there's a network hiccup and it could hang. In that case, quit KeyPad Server and run it again. Just close the window and run it again. And if it says ready for connection and you still are having problem, it's difficult to, I'll try to duplicate issues, but I'm not sure if I'll be successful. It's a quite robust network connection. In fact, it constantly reestablishes the connection in the background to make sure you don't lose it. So it's difficult to actually get into network issues, but if you do, just remember you could just, if you tap here and nothing happens, just tap again and then tap again until you get through. Sometimes it may take